Hey, what's up guys, Rogue9 here, and welcome once again to the Hot Breach podcast. With me as always, Prodigio Pete and Get Flanked. How's it going, guys?
Good. Yeah, really good, thank you, yeah.
Great.
Excellent.
Back from vacation, getting settled in, and ready to get back on the grind.
Yeah, you've got a bit of a nice tan there. How was Florida?
It was awesome. Warm weather. We had two kind of rainy, cooler days, but every other day, I was there for a week. Every other day was in the 80s. Got some time on the beach. I actually did some snorkeling, found some sand dollars. It was awesome. Well needed break.
What is a sand dollar? Excuse my
Sand
ignorance.
dollar is actually like a living organism that's in the water, and it's circular, and it has like a pretty little design on it. But when you pick it up, you can. Kind of sounds kind of mean when you talk about it this way. You pick it up and you bleach it, and then it turns white and it's like a decorative ornament that a lot of people see and have. And yeah.
Hey, the more you know.
Yeah.
So today's episode, we've got a lot to talk about in terms of the Burnt Horizon launch. The new season has gone live. I think it's a tale of two halves. A lot of great content and balancing changes, but some bugs as we're almost used to by now, and actually some really interesting bugs that we've never really seen before. I mean, we've had a lot of gameplay bugs in the past. This seems more technical, and there's a lot of odd things going on, so we'll be discussing those. There's a patch that went live today addressing some of that, so that's great. Then finally, we'll get round to talking about also some other games, like Apex Legends came out now weeks and weeks ago, and we've just been so busy with the Invitational and guests and backwards and forwards that we've not really had a chance to actually sit down and have a chat about this game and our thoughts on the game. So yeah, excited to get round to that. And then of course we have Pro League starting up again this week, in fact this evening for the North American League. So we'll have a little bit of a chat about what's changed. There's been a few smaller roster changes, a few larger organization changes, and we'll be focusing on the largest of that, as well as looking forward to the matches ahead. And before we get into that, thank you once again to today's sponsor, Ridge Wallet. Fans of the show will be well familiar with the product by now. They're really these sort of sleek designed modern wallets, mostly designed for cardholders, but also with a money clip on the back or a rubber band. One of the really great things about them is that they're made of really modern materials. I have the aluminium version. Get Flanked has been trying out the titanium, and Pete has the carbon fiber. Really great stuff. And one of the most important things about them with the modern cards that are sort of touch and go is that these wallets are 100% RFID blocking, so no one can just walk past you with a scanner and a laptop and steal your data. Great stuff. So if you're interested in these, go to ridgewallet.com/hotbreach. That is ridgewallet.com/hotbreach. And if you use the code HOTBREACH when checking out, you get a 10% discount with free worldwide shipping. Thank you very much for the sponsorship there. So, Burnt Horizon. Like I said, good content, good balancing changes, but some, interesting bugs. First and foremost, technical bugs. There's a lower FPS bug. I have to say, for me personally, that's not really affected me so much. I tend to play Rainbow Six at relatively high settings. I have the HD pack installed, and really my focus when playing Siege is not really on the sort of competitive end with the highest frames possible, but it's sort of being able to capture pretty looking footage, something that I can then use in the background of my videos. So for me, my normal frames are maybe between 100 and 120 FPS anyway. I don't really go all that high. And I have to say, I've not really noticed a massive drop, but I've seen a lot of players, especially pro players who of course depend on being as competitive as possible, complaining that the FPS counts for them are lower. Has this affected you guys at all?
No, like you, I just play at really high settings, and to be honest with you, you're very lucky to get those 120 frames. Those with the HD texture pack, I think you're very lucky.
I mean, I don't use the absolute maximum settings. I've turned a few bits here and down here and there just to sort of get that balance, but it's more geared towards looking nice than performing.
Do you know what it is though? I play on 1440p, which I semi-regret buying a 1440p monitor, by the way. I kind of do regret that. I wish I'd have stuck with 1080p until, 4K was mainstream. But no, I haven't been having the issues being widely reported by many of the community. It's just one of many issues, right?
Yeah, we'll go to them one by one, I would say.
I've noticed a little bit of a dip in frames. I'm usually anywhere from 220 to 240 frames, and I've noticed I'm maybe like 180, somewhere around in there. So I will. It depends on the map. But they changed a lot of stuff. Did you notice like the update was 50 gigs, and it before I think you said, I saw you on Twitter, Rogue. You were saying that Siege took up like 100 gigs on your PC, and now it's down to 50. So some stuff changed. So I'd say there's definitely some truth to what people are saying, and I'm experiencing it myself. But it's not like game breaking, I wouldn't say.
Yeah, I don't doubt that there is truth. The thing, why was your update 50 and mine 85?
So that's actually an interesting point to make. Maybe let's start at the beginning there. The entire basically file and folder structure on our PCs and even on the consoles has been reconfigured and switched around. So yeah, my game with the HD texture pack used to be over 100, over 110. Like, was it 114? I tweeted. It was huge. That was my Rainbow Six game. So what has changed is that now basically the reason this patch was so huge, and a lot of people were confused about that as well, was because we all re-downloaded the game from scratch. So anyone without the HD texture pack will have had 52 gig, and anyone with the HD texture pack will have had about 30 gig extra, so 82-ish. So that's why the update was so huge. But yeah, I can say for myself, my game has gone from 114 gig down to 82, and conversely, anyone who doesn't have the HD pack should have gone from sort of, 80-something or mid-80s down to about 50, and then on consoles it's only now 30-something. So they've repackaged and restructured the entire game to take up much less space. So maybe that sort of huge change that's gone on in the background is why there's some technical issues, especially with frames. I've seen no confirmation that that's the exact reasoning, but that is something that I see as a possibility for sure.
I feel like I had the HD texture back before, and now I don't. And I only realized that once you said that. But now that I'm thinking about it, I noticed, I was like, this game doesn't look right. I was thinking because whenever I was on vacation, I was playing on my laptop, just like T-Hunts and a little bit of casual, but I was playing on my laptop, and I was thinking, well, it must be because I was playing on a 15-inch screen coming back to this. So, but now that you mention it, I think that I didn't get the HD texture pack, so now I'm kind of worried, like, if I download that HD texture pack, am I going to lose more frames? Because I've already lost a little bit.
Well, what might have happened if you downloaded it onto your laptop, maybe those settings stayed with Uplay, so that when you logged back into your PC on that Uplay account, it kept those settings you had on your laptop and just downloaded the non-HD texture pack version of Rainbow Six Siege, which is probably what's happened, right?
Yeah, I bet you're right. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, another issue, and this is kind of recurring, we are having sound issues. And I mean, apart from obviously being kind of annoying when you're a regular player of the game, when you can't hear certain sounds, like a player dropping through a hatch or a gadget being thrown at you. Imagine like there's a C4 coming your way and you don't hear it. You don't hear the tear, you don't hear it land, you don't hear it beeping. All of that is gone. But of course, it's especially now worrying for the pro players who start their competition this week again, even this evening. So sound issues back. Any comments on those?
Not good.
Some of it's directional as well. So like you hear the sound coming from a different direction to where it ought to be coming from. So obviously then it's really hard to tackle.
Yeah, I think I saw, was it Goddess tweeting about that she's almost as if it was reversed. And obviously that makes you wonder, is it the headphones? But no, obviously she's got her headphones the right way around. She knows how those go. And yeah, so confusing for sure. And I wonder maybe because Rainbow Six does have a complex sound system, right? The sound doesn't necessarily come from the direction that the sound is originating from, but it sort of propagates from room to room by going either through breaches in walls or through windows and doors once they've been opened. So depending on whether a door is closed or not, whether a wall is open or has a hole or not, the sound is different and has to sort of travel differently, which is a complex system that most games don't bother with. And I think maybe that is partially something that could be causing troubles here, just that extra level of complexity.
Do you guys remember with PUBG, it was revealed at one point that if there were, like, I forget how many, but like 12 sounds going on at one time, then that 13th sound would not come through.
Okay.
You don't remember that? That was revealed. I forget what stream I was watching. I want to say it was either Dr. Disrespect or Shroud. Like, it will only handle so many sounds. And after that, that's why the sound is so inconsistent in that game, is because if you got a lot of stuff going on, you're not going to hear footsteps coming right around the corner.
The other problem with that game is the dynamic range of the sound, or was for so long. I haven't played PUBG for like maybe 6 months, but I was playing it all the time, and the dynamic range, like, you have to turn your volume right up to hear things, but then suddenly you go through a bombing zone and it is absolutely deafening, or being on the plane. So I think that game had a lot of sound issues just generally, whereas Siege, the sound engineering is actually quite incredible from a scientific standpoint, the way it works, and it permeates through damaged floors and stuff. It's just bugs, basically, that is the undoing.
That's the
Siege.
problem. There's one comment in my chat from Simran P01 also saying that Maverick's torch is quiet again, which is being backed up by others. So that, again, is probably something that can be really frustrating, and especially if you're going into Pro League. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see how they deal with that and how things go this evening, because that could be worrying. Here's a funny bug, and I laugh about this because it didn't affect me, but probably really scary and frustrating when it happens for the first time. So there's a new system that came out that basically means that this season, anyone at any point, if anyone plays with a cheater, plays with or against a cheater, not only is the MMR rolled back for the people who are boosted by cheaters and they're banned and all of those things that happened before, but now there's a system in place whereby every match that included a cheater gets basically nullified. So if you lose against cheaters and those cheaters then a week down the line, 2 weeks down the line, they get banned and removed, then also all of the games they've played, either with you or against you, they basically get completely annulled. And yeah, the system, shall we say, has gone rogue or is bugged. Something's desperately wrong with the system, because there's a few people that were playing and then after winning a match, they got a notification saying, hey, you've just lost 1,000 points. So really crazy stuff. There's people who are literally thousands of MMR down, which is just the difference between sort of high gold and copper almost. It's quite fun. That is a bug, though. It's been confirmed as a bug, and they're working on, first of all, fixing the system. The system has been stopped right now, so that is on hold until it works. And they're also looking at rolling back the changes that have been made so far. So if you're amongst those people who have been unjustly punished, you will see your points returned.
Just a question on that. So what it sounds like, they said before they implemented it this season that they had this system of MMR rollback that they've been testing behind the scenes before rolling it out, and everything seemed good to go because it had been tested widely before it went live. Now, obviously, they set it live this season, as they stated, and then they've run into these issues where people are winning matches and losing like 1,000 elo or whatever. Is it now safe for people to go into ranked if they want to play ranked? Because, well, they've said they've put that on hold. Does that mean that it's not happening? Because I think that was yesterday that It's Epi put that on Reddit. So for the people watching, does that mean that you can play ranked now without that risk?
I would assume so, yeah.
Right.
But also in terms of playing and not playing, I mean, I saw a lot of people sort of saying or tweeting that they were going to stay away from ranked in order to stay safe. Yeah. But then there were also players that lost their MMR overnight without even playing.
Oh, God.
So I don't think there really was a safe place.
Yeah.
And if you'd already played, you might already get caught in it. But yeah, there shouldn't be any more incidents going forward.
Okay.
You know, kind of just like I kind of just like I get it. Like, this would have been extremely frustrating. I was on vacation, so I didn't have to deal with this. And if I would have lost my mind. There were stories of people who went to bed at Plat 3 and woke up at Copper. And I mean, can you imagine me on this podcast right now if that had happened to me? But can I just say, I did get a little bit of satisfaction out of getting on Twitter and seeing some of these rank stars showing their screens of them winning a match and losing like 1,000 elo down to like silver and stuff. I was just like kind of smirking a little bit on the back end. Like, I get it. I honestly do, but it was kind of funny to watch.
I think it's the timing as well, right, Flanked? That they're saying it's about to come out of beta, and it's just, it couldn't have had worse timing.
Yeah, and that's not even. I'm sure that Rogue is getting ready to talk about another bug that's affecting the Eastern U.S. players in ranked as well. I mean, it's. Let's just. I at one point I was down in Florida and I'm like, man, the season's getting ready to roll out. Like, this is like the worst time for me to be on vacation. No, I within a couple of days of the season rolling out, I was like, good call. I'm glad I'm here. I'm gonna go back to snorkeling. You guys have fun losing elo to Brazilians.
Yeah, I definitely echo that sort of sentiment of a little bit of schadenfreude there. I saw some tweets. I didn't see this live, but apparently, obviously, it happened to some of the guys live on stream. And King George, apparently, I only saw the tweets where people were talking about the stream of King George and his reaction live. I think that would have been quite amusing to see. I mean, not amusing to happen to you, but amusing to see, as mean as that is. But the good news is it's getting fixed and everyone's going to be compensated. So no real harm done apart from maybe a short-term scare. And yes, you mentioned wrong data centers. So that's actually a fix that went out today. And in fact, I can show the tweet for that. So basically, there was some kind of bug that affected, you're saying, Eastern US players?
Yeah.
Predominantly.
If you queued Eastern US, then it would put you into the wrong data center occasionally.
Yes, so I think this is based on tweets that I saw from people and seeing live streams, but the idea was that it would put them on Brazilian servers. And yeah, I've definitely seen some people streaming where all of a sudden their entire team and the opponent team are suddenly between 150 and 250 millisecond pings out of nowhere. So definitely interesting to suddenly be redirected to the wrong servers. But yeah, like I mentioned, the good news is as of today, there is already a patch out that addresses that. Alongside this change, there's also, there was announced a C4 crash in custom match being fixed. That is not actually being fixed. There was a correction later on. And that, I think, is maybe a little bit of a worry for Pro League again, because they play custom matches. So we hopefully won't see too many crashes or issues this evening.
You just won't be able to use C4s in Pro League anymore. How about that?
Could you imagine?
Is that an ESL rule, emergency rule, like tonight, no C4s.
Right as BC comes back, it's a conspiracy. That's what it is. BC is back on Dark Zero, and they are going to sweep this under the rug to try and eliminate C4s from him being able to use it.
Exactly, it's a conspiracy. No, so obviously C4s, as far as we know, will be available and hopefully won't cause any crashes or issues this evening. That would be frustrating. This is actually an intentional fix, but it's been confusing a lot of people, and I think we'd maybe talk about that, and that's lean spam has been fixed. And as part of the fix, they also changed the way the camera works when leaning. So the way it used to work is obviously your camera is in the center of your player's forehead, basically between the eyes when you're walking straight. But as soon as you lean, the camera used to move to the outside of your head, basically so that you could peek with one eye, but still be able to see properly, rather than be a cyclops, right? So that's how it used to work. Now, the problem that caused with the new slow leaning was that someone could actually manage to get a headshot on an angle-holding defender or attacker without exposing their own head. So in order to combat that, they've now changed the camera so it's always in the center of the head, whether you're leaning or not. And that has been confusing people a lot because they're sort of either peeking around corners or holding angles. And this actually happened with an opponent while I was playing. He just sort of peeked around the corner, I shot him in the head, and he was just absolutely stunned. He couldn't see me, how could I see him? And then the thing that makes this really confusing and is probably the real issue is that there's a problem with the death camera, in that basically then when everyone who sees the death cam, including the shooter, gets to see it as it was. The person sticks their head round and I shot the guy and that was it. But on his death cam replay, he wasn't even on screen yet. And that's a problem that I've seen people tweeting about as well. Like on their replay, when they die, they're not on the screen yet and they see a guy just shoot at the air and then they die. So a lot of confusion, and I can see how that's causing confusion.
This lean mechanic's becoming an absolute nightmare, isn't it? Because what is the actual logical solution? Because I can understand the thought process behind that change, but then wouldn't you argue that you should if someone can see you, that you can see them? Like, it's kind of tricky in a way. Is it just about getting used to this change? But then it brings it...
The thing to really be careful about, the cause of the issue of being seen without being able to see is what is called the parallax effect. So that is basically that if you are close to the obstacle, whether it's a doorway or a corner, and the opponent is far away, then they can more easily see past it than you can. And that's always been a thing in Rainbow Six, right? The advantage is always when you're further away from the obstacle or the corner or the doorway rather than close to it. And yeah, so it used to always be that like this, but now it's even worse. The thing you need to now start to learn and get used to is if you're peeking a corner or an angle or a doorway, try to stay back as far as possible, because if you get really close, you're actually going to expose potentially up to half of your head before the camera, which is in between your eyes, actually gets to see around the corner. And the closer you are to the object or wall or whatever it is, the worse it's going to be for you. So stay back as far as possible.
Interesting. It's a good tip.
You know how they often make these changes before they bring in a new gadget? This could be the preparation for the corner shot.
The corner shot, I like it. I like it.
Just starting some rumors.
Valid speculation there. And I mean, I've seen a lot of speculation about the down but not out change, like when you're revived, the health has changed. And maybe we can discuss that a little bit as well in a bit. About that being maybe about a potential new gadget coming or a new revive mechanic, a new health regain mechanic, something like that. It's definitely interesting. I think in this case, because we saw the progression of the change, we saw, okay, they want to fix lean spam, they fix lean spam, but then Godly Noob discovers a problem with it. Hey, you can actually peek without being seen. Then they address that by moving the camera, and then that's now caused a problem with the death camera, which is causing more confusion. So it's just been sort of this sort of almost like a domino effect. There was an issue at first, they fix that, it causes another issue, they fix that, it causes another issue. So I think it's just the most important thing to sort of sort this out, I think, is fixing the death cam, so that when you get shot, you actually see the proper perspective and you see that you were visible, and people will have to get used to the fact now that if you're very close to an obstacle and you're peeking around it, you're actually exposing yourself without even being able to see. So I suppose time will tell whether this is a problem in the long run, but I think it's... My prediction for now would be that it's a case of getting used to the new camera mechanic and preferably obviously seeing a fix to the death screen as soon as possible to stop confusing people.
Really shows the complexity of this game and how difficult it is to really fix problems in it. Can we get an end-all be-all? Was anything done to crouch spamming?
Not yet. It's still on the table. I think that's... I'm going off the top of my head from memory here, but I think sort of the early message was we've done something to address lean spam, which was just this crazy left and right, and people were coming up with macros to just go absolutely bonkers. That's been fixed. Crouch spam is being looked at, but I think on its own, it's less of a problem than the two combined. So that's sort of the as far as I remember, because I think it was only once mentioned right at the beginning, that's the order they're going in. Lean spam first, and then looking
One
at crouch
thing at a
spam
time.
for looking at crouching for the future.
Yes.
So I mentioned the health change, and maybe that's worth having a bit of a discussion about as well. So back in the day, when you were revived, you would get 50% health back, which was so valuable, really, that it kind of brought on this mechanic of resetting, where people would commit suicide by jumping off a roof or shooting their friend or something like that, and then revive to regain the health. And now that is basically been taken care of. That's been removed from the game by taking the revive health down to 20% instead. So what are your guys' thoughts on that? Do you think is the reason actually that it was the resetting, that they wanted to deal with resetting, or was there maybe a different reason for it? And do you think is it a positive thing for the game to have less health once revived?
You see, I don't understand what the big issue was, and I thought that was part of it. It was always an unusual mechanic, right? That you could basically, in a way, sort of exploit this mechanic whereby by being downed you can come back with more health. It's obviously not a realistic thing, as many things in games, and I kind of liked the strategy behind it, the team play that was involved, and the risk of someone that they didn't really know what they were doing switching to a sidearm that does more damage, or not hitting you with a nitro, or not firing it through a soft wall to reduce the damage on the shot and do it. So I always quite liked it, but I'm open to persuasion as to why they changed it, if one of you thinks it's a good thing. One of the side effects I saw, I think it was either Bikini Body or yourself, Rogue, talking about on Twitter, was in a way it's kind of a buff to some of the lesser picked operators and some of the more picked operators on the defensive side, right? Like Capcan and if you want a more highly picked operator, Legion. But I can't think that they did it for that reason. I could only imagine that they thought it was an issue that people were doing that they wanted to tackle. But was it really that big a problem?
I'm torn on this, and I don't really know yet. I haven't dug into ranked enough since I've been back to really say one way or the other whether I feel like this is a good change or a bad change. From the surface, I can see where they're coming from. I think that it now is a little bit of a penalty to aggressive play, whether it is an attacker or defender aggressive play. It's a little bit of a buff maybe to Doc, a little bit of a buff to Clash, kind of like what you were saying there, Pete. I think that was Bikini that pointed that out. If somebody's revived, they only have 20 health, that's pretty easy for a Clash to finish that person off. So we'll see how it plays out. But I understand the thing with resetting was the positive with it was it required teamwork. And that's always a good thing in a game that, it wasn't like a solo queuer could just reset themselves. No issue. You required teamwork in order to do that. And it's kind of weird to remove an aspect of that.
Yeah, it was technically it was an interesting thing. Obviously, it makes no sense to shoot your friend to be able to give them more health. That's nonsense. But, I mean, from a gameplay perspective, you have to invest some time, especially if you're on the attacking side. You have to invest time that you're not getting ready for a push. You have to have at least two people, if not a third, covering them that are out of the game, that are doing this mechanic, that are going through this sort of reset. And it's also a risk. It's a risk-reward trade-off because while this reset is going on, two players are completely vulnerable to just being taken out. And in return, they have the promise of a bit more health in future. I really like that. Yeah, I really like that as a mechanic, which is why I was also thinking sort of, well, why not have something like give everyone a health pack that they can't use themselves, but they need a teammate to apply, and it will take time and effort, and they'll both be vulnerable during that time. And that way, you still have, once you come back from being downed, you still have that opportunity to gain a little bit of more health back, to sort of keep the mechanic, but remove the sort of silliness of someone jumping off roofs and then doing that. Or maybe
that could be coming, Rogue. That could be a secondary gadget that's coming.
Yeah. Or maybe it is related to a completely new operator.
Yeah.
Who knows? One of the interesting things to note is that, yes, Doc is definitely being affected in that in the past, if you revive a teammate first, and this was interesting as well, because as Doc, obviously, you have the stim pistol. You can use it from afar. It's instant. You don't have to sort of risk exposing yourself. You could just shoot the person and they would get 75 health back. But if you invested the time and took the risk to revive them first to... 50 health, and then stim them for an extra 40, you could get the player back up to 90. So there was sort of that risk-reward trade-off there as well. That is now gone. If you revive someone, they come back at 20. If you stim them, they're at 60, whereas if you revive them from being downed, they get 75. So if anyone built up that habit of first trying to revive and then stim, get rid of that quickly, because you're actually going to take more risk, more time, and you're going to end up with less health on the downed player. So that's important to keep in mind as well.
What do you think of this talk about there could be some healing pack then? Because you kind of mentioned that in the intro to this point and you haven't got to it yet. Do you think that's a possibility?
That's just me. That was just basically me expressing sort of a wish. I would like to see the mechanic of being able to trade risk and time for more health to have that still there, because it was an interesting tactical decision, which is now gone. As silly as resetting was, it was an interesting tactic to use. So if that's replaced with something that makes more sense, I'm perfectly up for that. If that's replaced with a completely new operator, or if Finker is somehow reworked to become more of a health operator on the attacking side, that I think definitely would be interesting. Having just resetting removed in general and having nothing replace it, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I would like to see either one or the other, either a gadget or just a repurposing of an operator or a new operator to somehow have that ability, because it just makes the game, especially when you're on attacking and you don't have the option of picking Doc, it makes the game more punishing, right? If you get downed, then that's it. Even if you get revived, which is highly risky and highly unlikely to achieve, the reward is minimal. You're still one-hit kill for basically any weapon, and almost all of the traps will take at least half of your health if it's Legion, or kill you instantly anyway. So...
Do you think it has to be a primary gadget then? Something like that?
It could be primary, it could be secondary. Like I said, sort of if it's like a health pack that you carry with you, but that you don't use yourself because you're incapacitated, but someone else uses it and it's a one-off use, then... yeah, I don't mind that, as if it sort of emulates the risk and time versus health trade-off that we had before. I don't think it should be too easy, unless it's a dedicated operator or a primary gadget. But yeah, if it still sort of encourages the team play and everything that was good about resetting, I'm perfectly fine by that. So one of the things that was cut from this update that was supposed to be in there was the Capitao change. So he was changed in that the area of effect of his gadget is larger, but also there is more realistic propagation. So rather than being able to shoot at a wall and the gas or flame or whatever it is would just form basically a sphere that would work through walls, through floors and everything, it would only work around obstacles, but obstacles would stop this fire from spreading. But as a trade-off, it became larger and also did less damage. That has just been completely taken out as part of what was experienced during the test server. Did you guys have thoughts on that?
No, but I would say that the less damage still seemed pretty bloody quick. I wouldn't want to hang around in that. You know, I wouldn't want to just stroll out of that asphyxiation bolt area.
No, it was going to completely change the game. It was going to completely eliminate some of the more traditional sites in this game. You think about one thing that I did with it was bank, the bottom floor. People always set up the mirror looking towards the server, so there's that really default plant spot. You take out the wall with the thermite, and then the thermite backs in backwards, and then plants right there. You always had that mirror on the wall. Well, from that hatch, you could shoot a Capitao bolt down and it would light up that whole area, making that mirror wall and everywhere there. You couldn't stand there at all. You think about Oregon, the closet down there, it would completely fill that whole area up it was going to completely change a lot of those sites, and it was just a bit too much. I like where their head's at. I think that something like that is needed for Capital, but they got to figure out a way to do it without it maybe changing so much.
That's fair enough.
Interesting.
One of the things on the new map that we saw throughout testing, and that has been addressed as we went along, but is still in there, is the ability to clip through walls. So I saw a very amusing tweet the other day with a video of an entire team just rappelling up this wall, and there's a window there, but it's not a breachable window. It's a closed window. You can't see through it. It's got bars on it. You're not meant to go through there. And you see all these guys just rappelling up the wall and then just swinging and clipping through the wall, and they're all inside in an area where they're not expected, and they just run in and kill everyone.
I've seen that.
Hilarious to watch. Maybe not so great when it happens to you and you're blindsided suddenly from nowhere.
But it's a new map, right? So
it'll be fixed.
There's bound to be these little things that...
We've never seen that before, though, is my counter-argument. We've never seen so many clipping. I mean, I suppose I've seen a few videos on Villa, the Italian map, where people were getting drones in the floor and then just being able to see the entire cellar and stuff like that. But like as many clipping issues as this, I don't feel I've ever seen before.
Well, if you think back long enough, though, there were times I just remember people clipping out the map all the time using shields and stuff. And I mean, I can remember one particular instance. I showed it on YouTube. There was a guy on the plane map, and I didn't show how he did it. I just kind of showed the kill cam, and he got into the fuselage of the plane. I mean, he was able to shoot everywhere, but you couldn't even see him. He just clipped through. So the clipping thing's been there a while, and I think I'll give them the benefit of the doubt just because it's a new map, you know. And I think sometimes a community of 1 million players is going to be able to find an issue that perhaps a team of devs wouldn't be able to find, you know. As long as
the thing that's weird about it is you get the repel option to enter. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it almost seems to me like there was a breachable window or something there before, and they moved it out, and maybe they forgot to remove the commands for it, and it just, you know.
That's what you might be right. That might have just been a normal window at one time, and they've covered it cosmetically, so to speak, but not got rid of that option of vaulting in.
Right.
Rappelling in.
Yeah, it's definitely weird to have the prompt, right?
That's odd. But you're right, that did make me laugh watching all those people jumping while he was doing the lion.
What's even funnier is to see somebody put a frost trap there, and then they do it, and they get caught in the frost trap.
Yeah, that'd be good. Any
other sort of beginning of the season comments from you guys? Anything that you've noticed?
I just want to say it's discouraging. I feel like there was so much momentum going into this season. You know, year 4 reveal was overall received very well. And, you know, we're on a high note, you know, coming out of the Invitational, going into year 4. And then, you know, it drops, and this stuff just kind of takes some of the air out of the ball and really kind of brings everybody down a notch. And it'll be fixed, as it always is. And I think that year 4 has great content, which is going to be here to stay. And I think there's still a lot to be really excited about. But, man, can we just get to a point where we could roll out a season without having these issues? I would love to see us get there one day.
Yeah, I can only really echo, you know, what you're saying. I suppose the only thing I'd add to it, didn't Ubisoft say that they had a rollback option when... So they've rolled, not just on OTTS, but when a patch goes live. So with all the issues they've had, could they have done that and said, right, give it a couple of weeks and we'll re-roll out that patch with all those changes? There's just some things we need to figure out internally. Well,
then you're dealing with the headline. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't have done this, but think about the headline. Rainbow Six Pro League delayed for the second time in one season. You know? And maybe they did use that rollback partially for the MMR. You know, they dropped that on the drop of a dime. They stopped the MMR rollback. So maybe that was part of what they did there with that. But I think if I'm the Ubisoft PR guy, I'm thinking, how can we find, you know, how bad is it? Do we really need to cancel Pro League for the second, or delay Pro League for the second time?
Yeah, it's a trade-off. I mean, if it had been done quickly enough, could it even have avoided a delay? Just sort of roll back the build for Pro League. I mean, mostly it's the Pro League players right now that are tweeting this image that has the sort of the rollback promise and the rollback option. And yeah, I feel for them. Like, they have to play on this. It's their job now. It's not entertainment and fun for them. It's frustrating enough when you're playing ranked and something weird happens that affects an outcome of the game. If this is your job and it's your money on the line, or your opportunity to get to the finals and play for a prize pool, that's serious, and I can understand that that's really worrying, and that they are asking for this rollback. And maybe it doesn't have to be a rollback of the whole patch. Maybe the player base can continue playing as possible, or as it is right now, and the Pro League build that the competitions are held on, that gets changed. I don't know if that's a possibility to split the two apart, and obviously we've talked about this in the past, about the differences between Pro League and the live build, confusing players, and because everything is slightly different. So there's that argument as well. But yeah, it's about weighing up what is the lesser of the two evils, right?
Yeah, and we may very well watch Pro League tonight and not see a single issue arise. And I certainly hope that's the case. You know, a lot of times you do live in your little echo chamber on Twitter of everybody just, for lack of a better word, shit posting about the game because there's issues. And I mean, again, I haven't been super into ranked since I got home yet. I've played maybe a total of like 4 ranked matches. I haven't had an issue pop up yet. I'm not discrediting anybody who says that there are issues. I believe them, but I'm just saying that it doesn't mean that we're going to have issues tonight or at Pro League at all.
I had someone in my chat just say, I haven't played this season yet. Is it really that bad? And I just realised that we've been doing the podcast for 40 minutes, and it does, you know, obviously we're addressing all the news and what's going on. And it sounds like catastrophic, but actually it wouldn't be unreasonable just to log in and have 0 issues there, buddy. So, like, this is just highlighting the issues being experienced by millions. Like, if you have a player base of millions of people, you're going to have lots of different issues. It doesn't mean that you're going to experience every single one of these issues when you log in and play. You may experience none of them.
That's a good point, Pete. I'm glad you said that because I haven't experienced any issues.
And I'll echo that as well. I've played and I noticed nothing. I didn't notice sound problems. I didn't notice even my FPS. I didn't notice a huge difference. So yeah, the bottom line is it probably will not affect you. And I mean, psychological research shows quite clearly that people are far more likely to report negative events and also experience and remember negative events than they are positive ones. So obviously when we go onto Twitter and we see all of these different players, pro players or players that stream every day for hours and hours, people who really play an awful lot of the game, and then this one time something happened, then that becomes obviously part of your consciousness, and it's something you become aware of. But I can only reiterate, I've played and it was fine. So
this is really off topic, but I was thinking about this recently. Content creators and streamers, and I'm not throwing shade at anyone, but I feel like we have a responsibility sometimes because, like, obviously we play the game a lot, and particularly, I suppose, if you're streaming every day, if you have a frustration with the game, it can really, and I'm not like taking anything away from people who are having a crap time with MMR and losing ELO at the moment, but I mean, when you have someone that is playing literally thousands and thousands of hours of a game, sometimes their perspective can be skewed or even more frustrated than someone that just comes home from work and plays 2 hours in the evening 3 times a week. You know, someone that's playing thousands and thousands of hours, it is going to frustrate them so much more. I used to think that when I was covering Battlefield on YouTube, and I used to think, like, sometimes the content creators, they rank up so quick because they're playing so much of the game, and then they talk about, hey, there's no reason to play anymore, I'm bored. But the average gamer is just playing a bit on the weekend and a couple of evenings a week, and they've got plenty of content to get through and ranks to go up and things to unlock that a streamer or a content creator that's playing 10 hours a day is soon going to eat through that. Yeah. So that can... Anyway, that was completely off topic.
No, absolutely not. I think it's completely right. The more you play, the more likely you are to experience each of these problems that we've talked about now. But if you play a bit, there's a good chance that you might not notice at all. I think that's absolutely fair.
So just one last thing before we move on. Luke Craig in my comment section says, hey, Pete, For my terrorist hunt, it's broken. C4 and bombers are 100% silent. Luke, so I haven't played it, but apparently on the new map, there is none of that rubbish. If you go and play Terror Hunt on the new map, Outback, you don't have the barbed wire, you don't have none of the nitro cells, none of that to worry about. So guys, if you do warm up playing T-Hunt, then that might be the map to do it on.
Yeah.
That's a trend that's been happening throughout the last few seasons, that whenever they put in a new map, the terrorist hunt mode on that map will have less of these frustrations. There'll be less barbed wire, less C4, and the bombers have always been part, I think, up until now, but then, this newest map, not even bombers. And, bombers, one way or another, okay, fine. But the C4 rooms and barbed wire rooms, like you're running around, you're just trying to warm up, and all of a sudden there's like, okay, I can sit here and just hit 50 pieces of barbed wire a million times just to get through here, or I can find a different route, or I'd have to just carefully pick away all of these C4s before I can get through this room. It's more of it's developed into more of a frustration than a benefit, and leaving those out, yes. So definitely go for the new map, I think. And with that, finally, we've the last time we talked about Apex was literally sort of the day or two before it launched, when it was still speculation. It hadn't even been properly announced yet. There's some leaks, a little bit of things. Hey, there might be a new game coming, and that's when we talked about it. And just like I said in the beginning, so much going on that we've not had a chance to talk about Apex yet. Apex Legends, thoughts?
Love it. I'm loving it. Yeah.
You're really a battle royale fan, though, right? Because I think that's it's
not especially good at them, but I do. Do you know what it is? I find battle royale games, and of the battle royale games I've played, really, it's just PUBG and Apex. I haven't played much Fortnite, just a tiny amount, but nothing to sort of shout home about. But I think the reason I like battle royale games is there's something in them which I love about Siege that has transferred over. And I think it's often, when you play other FPS games, your life is so meaningless. You can often respawn. Of course, it depends on the game mode, right? I mean, you could say that's Call of Duty, but then you could go and play Search and Destroy and it would be different. But largely speaking, if I play Conquest in Battlefield, sure, I don't want my team to lose tickets, but it kind of doesn't matter too much if I die and I respawn in. And most FPS games have been like that. And I think where I've enjoyed PUBG and now Apex Legends, nearly called it Apex Predator, is that they have that same aspect, right? It's that same kind of adrenaline rush when you're fighting a couple of people and you're trying to maintain your life, and it's that stressful situation. And, Apex is also very team-oriented, much like Siege. So I have to say it's been a marvellous surprise, that game coming out this year, and I'm really, really into it.
I want to kind of go back to the beginning and first talk about the marketing and the way that it was released. That was brilliant. And imagine having the guts to go and say, listen, we're going to release this game. It's going to be free to play. And we are not going to market it in any way, shape, or form until it's released.
Well,
that took some guts. But it worked in their favor.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I'm sorry to interject, but I don't know if it was necessarily guts. I think, I've read some report online, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it was that they were concerned to market it, because when you market a game for 6 months pre-launch and you have a beta for people to play, you build up a potential for negative publicity pre-launch.
Yes.
And particularly with a game that is funded by loot boxes, even though it's free to play, Respawn Entertainment were conscious of that. And so that was part of the reason I read that internally they came up with this idea of having zero marketing and just basically getting content creators, or influencers, as the industry calls them, on board for the release day, and then just see if the game sinks or swims after that sort of massive push from, like Shroud, I think Matimio, lots of great content creators that we all know. But yeah, it was definitely a risk not to promote it, but there was also an element of risk management in doing that too, I suppose is the point I'm making.
Yeah. Either way, I thought it was a really good decision on part, and was it really helped the game in my opinion. As far as the game itself, yeah, I enjoy it. I think I made a video on my second channel recently talking about the honeymoon's over, and that's how I kind of feel with the game right now. I still enjoy it, but some of the issues with the game have started to kind of, rub me a little bit the wrong way. They're addressing some of them. One of the issues that I pointed out was the wingman. The wingman was a big problem. They've fixed that for the most part. But the netcode is a severe problem that Battle Nonsense is, reported on, and it's pretty atrocious, even compared to other battle royales. So that's going to be something they have to address. And they're only in 60-person lobbies. I don't. You notice it, Pete, that if you drop in a highly populated area, you get that server lag where it feels like you're running against a wall. And yeah. I think that the free-to-play aspect kind of makes you like, oh, shucks. That's just the way this game is. And if you paid $30 for this game, though, you'd be like, what is this garbage? You know what I mean? Like, what is this? And that works for a while, but after a while, it doesn't matter whether you paid $30 or whether it was free to play. You're either going to keep playing the game or you're not. And those issues like that kind of wear on you after a while.
I think there's some irony in the fact that we've had all of these early access, small developer, indie battle royales. That's how it started out. It was all these little small games, or, hey, we're going to make a battle royale mode for a game that is meant to be something completely different. It's just being these little add-ons, these things. And all of those games that you would almost not take seriously properly, just functionally are so much better than the big AAA ones we've seen so far. We've seen the Call of Duty one and now Apex Legends, and for both of them, the netcode, one is worse than the other, basically. They're not great. I think Apex manages to get away with it to a degree because of the nature of the game. Right, you have incredible health pools. Once you start putting on armor, especially the higher grade armor, you can swallow easily more than a full magazine. Then it's not so easy to hit people at longer ranges because you have this sort of ballistic curve and the slower moving bullets, or at least they feel slower. So getting a feeling for being able to land all of your shots at sort of medium distances, and especially, adding on to that, fighting at medium distances, right? The further away you are from an opponent, the longer it will take for the bullets to reach them. So you have this sort of slower pace to the game, the longer distances, the huge health. All of this sort of contributes to masking the netcode issues. If you had instant kill headshots in this game, and you were fighting inside of buildings like we do for Siege, it would be borderline unplayable. You would just literally just die to enemies that you can't even see yet. But the fact that, okay, they might pump half a magazine into you before they come around a doorway for you, but because you have so much health, it gives you the impression that you're fighting back. You have a chance to fight back. There is huge Pika's advantage, but you don't notice it because of the massive health pools. And I think one of the aspects that kind of helps give this away a little bit is, first of all, obviously when you're on low health. When you're on low health and you're fighting within a building, someone can come around a corner and you're dead. That's it. And that's when you notice.
Super bullet. If that's what it feels like, is a super bullet to me.
Yeah. So that's one aspect. And also, you can also see it with the current meta, like the shotguns being really, really powerful, and all of the sort of strong single shot weapons or slow firing weapons like the wingman, because the meta right now, especially when you're fighting at closer range, is jump around a corner, get your shot in, and get back into cover before the opponent can respond. And it's all about subconsciously probably taking advantage of the Pika's advantage and just using this sort of horrendous netcode that the game is running on to build that advantage and use these weapons. Yeah, definitely not great, but on the plus side, I guess at least they've managed to mask the issue.
Well,
I agree. But
I said some bad things there, but let me just say, because you mentioned the indie developers maybe doing battle royale. One thing that this game does brilliant is the movement. I mean, you feel so fluid in this game, and just the ability to move through the map, all the zip lines, the fact that different when you are in one of like the open areas of Apex Legends in that map, and you and your squad go up against one other squad, and you're both using your legend abilities, and you have it's like epic, and it's beautiful in that sense. But there's also, to get back into a little bit of a negative, in my opinion, some pacing issues with that too. Another part of the meta right now in that game is you hear gunfire, which you can hear from a mile away. You can hear gunfire from so far away. You use that quick movement to third, fourth, fifth party people wherever that gunfire is going. And really, because of that large amount of health you have, if you're the last squad to show up, you're in a really good position to take all the loot that was there and just come away, looking really good, because the squad that was there before, maybe they won, but they're dinked up. They have maybe half health or less. They don't have enough time to loot. You show up while they're looting, and you get an easy win. That's kind of an issue. I almost feel like they need more players where you can have more centralized, fights. Either that or a bigger map. I don't know, but I feel like there is some pacing issues possibly.
Maybe that can be worked on.
Yeah,
definitely something that I would agree with is that fighting multiple people at a time, whether it's different groups or even when you're up against, if you are maybe lagging behind your team a bit, or you're up front and suddenly you come up against 2 or 3 guys. Skill can do so much for you, for the average player. Like if you're Shroud and you have 1 million hours of FPS experience, then sure, you can pull off some cool things and you can kill 3 people at once. But I think for the most normal players, if you're up against 2 others, that's it for you. You can basically do really well. You can hit your shots. You can have your aim on point. If they're doubling up on you, that's it. That decides the gunfight. I think one thing though that we haven't mentioned yet, and that is really worth also highlighting, is how they've taken Battle Royale and just really thought about all of the player comfort issues and details just to make this game so much easier to deal with. Because like you think about the ping system, like we've never seen before, where it's half automated. Depending on what you're pinging, it will tell you, hey, there's an open loot box here, or there's an enemy just been past here. Hey, I'm covering this way. So it's half automated, but also half manual, where you have this sort of very detailed ability of non-verbal communication with your teammates. I think that's really, really well thought out. And important as well, because it is a 3-man team only game. There's no way around it. And if you're soloing it, or there's only 2 of you, you're going to be playing with a random. And just even when most people nowadays have microphones, maybe not everyone likes using them. And so having this ping system, which is completely agnostic to what languages everyone's speaking, it just works. That is a great addition, something really well thought out. There's a few other examples as well.
There are quite a number of examples in how they push the genre forward. I was talking about them today and I completely forgot. One of the things the ping system is incredible because it's not convoluted. It's very user-friendly. It's not as though you have to have all this sort of keyboard or controller gymnastics to pull it off. It's just someone puts a ping down and you ping on their ping and it says, hey, I agree. Or you can go in the loadout screen and see exactly what your friends have. Or if I run over a level 2 armor and I'm wearing level 3 armor and I try to pick it up, it will not let me because it says, hey, you've already got better armor. And that's an issue in other Battle Royale games where you end up picking up stuff, or like you have that moment of confusion where you're not quite sure what you have in your inventory. So there are a number of really cool aspects where you can tell they really thought through how to implement something different. I would like to just for a moment get back to what Flank says with regards to the time to kill and the health that each character has. And I almost feel like that's an unsolvable problem because of the way that's just something that is part and parcel of the health and the armor in the game. Of course they can lower it and speed up the time it takes you to down an enemy, But I feel as though that is a design choice to go down that road. And if you are an incredible player, you're still probably going to lose. Probably if you come up against 2 or 3 mediocre players that are working well together. And you really do need to stick with your team, even if they're just random people, to do quite well. Unless you are like insanely good at FPS games, most of the time, a team of average players will take down an exceptional player. And I believe that's a design choice to do that. I do think as well at some stage we'll see solos. I really do, but just not yet.
One thing, Pete, that I think Fortnite is doing to try and combat third party, and I'm talking from what I've heard, not firsthand experience here, so bear with me. But my understanding is that a new change to Fortnite is that when you get a kill, it automatically recharges your health and shield. I want to say at least your health. So if you think about that, that is an interesting way around the third party. The big advantage of third party is you show up on an already weakened opponent while you're full health. So if I get a kill, if I finish somebody off, if that automatically recharges my health, now all I have to do is recharge my shield before that next fight. That could be an interesting way around it. I have heard people on both sides saying that it's a great change to Fortnite and that it's an awful change, but I do think it's something to look at.
I think there's like a leak or something to do with a character that might even come in with that ability, or I've heard some discussion of it. So that's sort of, maybe it's not going to be a character-wide change, but I could see there being an individual character that regains health as he inflicts damage or takes out opponents.
Yeah, and that's another issue. I do feel like the legends right now aren't balanced well. To me, again, with the meta, the strong legends are the ones that are useful in every gunfight. Bangalore can lay down smoke. She sprints really fast once people start firing at her, and she can call in an airstrike. Compare that to a caustic, where you basically have to be inside of a building or a confined area in order to get any use out of them whatsoever. It's not even comparable.
Yeah, I think hitboxes are also a huge problem. Who's the one that can sort of open these portals and stuff?
Wraith.
There you go. So Wraith, I mean, her abilities can be very useful in certain situations. Certainly sort of the secondary ability of just disappearing for a quick moment and then being able to escape. The portal ability, I've seen a few good uses now and then, but I think it's very situational. So from a gadget perspective, I'm calling them gadgets, from an ability perspective, I think maybe she's not so strong, but I see a lot of top tier players really, really playing her a lot because of her tiny, tiny hitbox. And I think someone did a test basically where they took almost call them operators, where they took every legend.
Understandable.
Every legend went to the same part of the map and then basically traced around them with a friend shooting and compared the size of the hitboxes. And we're talking about like 2.5 times the size from the smallest to the largest. Like you have these huge, huge characters like Caustic, for instance, or the Maori guy with his shield. I don't know their names. Gibraltar, there you go. You've got those guys who are just massive. Every legend has the same movement speed, so that's not a problem. But in terms of their size and their stance, especially Wraith with sort of this hunched down stance that she has, she's a smaller character and then she makes herself even smaller. It ends up being just a huge difference and a disparity in hitboxes.
Yeah.
I think they're going to work on the hitboxes, though. One thing that I think might be interesting is if those bigger characters were a bit tankier. You know, Gibraltar looks like he should be a tank, like he should have more health or, more armor, and perhaps he should, as compensation for this ridiculous hitbox for his character, to play as him. Though some people would argue that that's part of how you play him. He's very defensive kind of character in that you have this shield that you lay down and you don't necessarily push people from outside the shield. Or
I mean, for him, I think the argument is the gun shield, right? That covers up the head and that provides some cover, but you can't say the same for Caustic, who is the same or even larger, really. So
yeah, And also again, going to the meta in the game is there's a lot of hip fire. Like aiming down your sights and just looking at somebody in that game is not the play in most situations. You're going to die that way. The play is move around, make yourself really hard to hit, and if you get close enough, hip fire. And that's how most of my encounters end up going. You might ding somebody with the wingman at distance, but in the end, you're hoping to get up close and personal with the shotgun or the R99 or something.
Something that I noticed early on, and this might just be me personally, and it might just be an experience thing as well, I struggle with the hip fire, especially with the wingman, even at really close range. Like I'm so close that I'm virtually touching the person. I think this has to hit, and I just empty a wingman at them, hip firing, and nothing hits. And I just always wonder, like, how could that? What went wrong there?
Are you dropping packets? I mean, honestly, because I've seen that a lot with the wingman. Because here's one of the things, and with Battle Nonsense, he saw, and this isn't unique to Apex, but it's sending multiple packets because there's so much information to send. So if you which increases your likelihood of dropping packets, am I not right? You know what I mean? Like if you drop one, you're not getting that update. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, because I've seen that as well. I know exactly what you're talking about, and there may be an issue there with dropping packets, shots not registering. We'll see.
I mean, for me, this is specific mostly to the wingman. And I mean, in a video where I mentioned it, I had a lot of people criticizing me for it because the wingman in the right hands and used in the right way is overpowered. It is extremely strong. It can be extremely strong. But then, I mean, I watched some people who stream and whose actual job is to play games, and they're just very, very practiced, very experienced in the game. And I've even seen people with like a fully automatic heavy ammo weapon and just go, yeah, I'm going to throw this Spitfire aside for a wingman and then put on a large mag. So there's 12 shots in there. And then they're shooting at an enemy and they miss 11 shots and one shot hits. And I'm just thinking, was that really the trade to make? But this is someone who's 100% convinced that the wingman is it. And that's the consensus, right? The wingman is overpowered, it's broken, it's too powerful. And yet it's so unreliable, I find.
You need to get all the different attachments. You need the extended mag. You need that skull piercer thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you need so many different things to make it really, really a great weapon. Because obviously,
I feel like it makes snipers void. Like, why would you carry a sniper when I can bring the wingman? Now, granted, I need the skull piercer, and granted, I need to land a headshot, but I can boost the wingman up to 12 bullets. I still get the movement bonus of a pistol, and I don't know. I mean, I feel like the wingman has made snipers in that game just pointless.
I think I still prefer the G7 over it.
The G7. Oh, the Scout?
Yeah, with the light ammo. I think it does like does a fair bit of damage.
It does. Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
I think the key advantage of the actual scout weapons over the wingman is being able to have a scope. When you're fighting at really long distances, a scope is obviously something that can make a huge difference.
Yeah, I just feel like at really long distances in that game, I might ding him for 35 health. He's just going to heal. And you know what I mean? Like if it's at a distance that's truly long enough for my scope to be needed, then it's you know, unless I have a teammate that's flanking or something at that time, I don't know.
Honestly, it's true. The ranges of engagement in that game, it's just so pointless to engage someone at like 200 meters, which isn't that far, but it's far enough that they can duck into cover and just eat up a shield battery or whatever. Unless you are immediately going to push them after that, if you're going to give them time to use the battery, then that was just a needless engagement that just made everyone on the server aware that you were there and you were aware of where those other enemies were that you were shooting at. So honestly, I would agree that much of the time it is kind of pointless. So doesn't that nullify the argument that the wingman is OP? Because that's... I wouldn't want to use a wingman in, you know, someone 10 meters away if I'd rather have an automatic.
I think what it means to me is that the medium range, it's kind of like the god of medium range, I guess you could say. You know what I mean? Like, and it's beneficial up close. I have more of a problem with the wingman than I do the peacekeeper, because the peacekeeper has severe weakness at long range. The wingman doesn't. It's good at long range. It's good medium range. It's good at short range, as long as you're landing bullets. I said this on Twitter. I'm okay with high skill weapons, and the wingman is a high skill weapon. You have to land your bullets. It just seems weird to me that the best gun in the game, potentially with the right attachments, has that high of a loot drop, has that high of a drop. It's a pistol, and it's just so spammable. I think that's the biggest thing that I'll say with the wingman is, at the end of the day, it needs to be less spammable, and I believe that they agreed with me based upon the nerf that they gave it. The rate of fire was decreased, and the hip fire spread was increased. So I think that was a good fix.
Yeah, I've thought of a few more things that the game has really done right that we haven't seen before. The looting, the fact that your enemies' boxes will basically be color-coded depending on what kind of loot they have, makes it really easy to pick what you want to loot. The fact that you can ping within loot boxes when you're just scrolling through what's in there, just press spot on that and it will ping that. You can ask for ammo and stuff by going through your own inventory and pinging that. Those are some, almost no-brainers when you think about it, but never done before, things that just make it so simple and easy. And like you mentioned, Pete, the fact that it guides you to what loot is better, it's just so easy and so intuitive. It's almost a question why this wasn't a thing before.
I can see if you're in combat on the HUD UI at the bottom. If I'm in a team with you, I can see that you're shooting at someone immediately. I don't need to say, Rogue, is that you shooting at someone, as you do in every other Battle Royale. I can look down, and next to your name, it shows fire. So I can see that you're engaged, and I can immediately come over and laugh at you or try to help. I can go, I can hit, yeah.
The respawn. I mean, you can respawn your teammates. How huge is that? Is really awesome. In the beginning, in the end game, it gets kind of pointless because everybody's so stacked with gear. But in the first circle, yeah, that's huge. It really is.
Yeah, and again, that's a cool mechanic in terms of risk and reward, because then you have to first fight your way to the body, you have to retrieve the little card, then you have to find a respawn location, then you call a ship in, which is basically a red flag to everyone within sort of a sight line. Like, there's a brand new player coming in right now with no gear. It takes time, and then, you have no weapons or gear coming back. It's definitely an opportunity with a lot of risks. A cool idea for sure. There was one last thing which I've now lost my train of thought.
When you hit tab and you can see what shield your team has?
Yeah.
Like all like, was that it? Yeah.
And it was related to that. The thing I wanted to mention was the voice lines, so that there's automatic voice lines for the characters of your teammates. I'm under fire. I'm engaging. And this is not something that a player needs to do. They don't need to send that message. It's just, I've just been hit. There's enemies over there. Just as soon as something happens, it's also conveyed in a verbal manner, which you don't have to control. There's just so many little things that enable you to play with someone completely random with no voice comms at all and still get by. It's always better to have actual voice comms and be with your friends. But still, this does as much as I think is almost possible to sort of get you to that level where you can play with someone completely random without voice comms and still have the same or similar experience or a good chance.
Yeah, and it's completely free. There's no barrier to entry. If you go and spend £500 on it, you're not going to have any advantage over me if I spend nothing on it. It's just free for everyone to play. You can spend some money and look kind of cool if you want. And they're going to roll out seasons. So there's going to be 4 seasons a year, much like Rainbow Six Siege. There'll be new characters coming in each season, though I don't think it's been clarified. There is a general feeling that there's going to be 2 characters, and I believe the new season might start tomorrow. So if you are into Apex, that's the rumour that the new season drops tomorrow. But I don't know if they're going to go for the 2 legends or if they're going to go for 1. The feeling is it's 2, and that the 2 coming along are called Watson and Octane. That's the leaks. But it will be interesting if they do 2, right? Because they've talked about this being a 10-year game. I don't know where we've heard that before. And they've got these seasons with these new characters. I don't know where that's been before. But almost I feel like if it is 2 per season, that's 8 a year. That's going to be an awful lot of new legends in the game with their own special abilities and things that they need to do. to a point where it could get a little bit crazy. I mean, we kind of see that in Siege sometimes. Like where they have to take a few more liberties with the abilities than perhaps they did in the early year or two.
Yeah. I think the sky's the limit for the game. I mean, they've got a great model. They honestly do. They have a great model, and they've got the foundation right. If they can improve on that net code, I mean, really, the sky's the limit for this game.
I'm certain they will, mate. I'm certain they will.
They'll have to, I think, in the long run. One last question, maybe before we move on. Have you noticed a problem with head glitching at all? Because I died once and then I recorded a clip of it and I had to go back and look at it again and again and again. And I'm getting shot at by someone who is on a roof of a building that has a sort of a slope. He's on the other side of the slope on this peaked building. And from my perspective, all I see is these sniper shots coming at me and just hitting me. And I just, even watching the recording, there's no way of being able, there's nothing. There's no head there. And obviously no gun either. Like in a game like Battlefield, your bullets actually come out of your gun. So if you want to shoot over an obstacle like that, you have to expose yourself sort of at least to the top half of your upper body. But here it seems that like in Siege, the bullets come out of your eyes at least. And maybe, I don't know about the camera position, but from that one example, it felt to me as if the camera position is actually pretty high up on the head and that I literally died without being able to see an opponent.
I haven't noticed that,
and I haven't noticed that.
I believe it. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. But
okay, fair enough. Maybe before we go back to Rainbow Six, just sort of an interesting thought about EA's strategy here. We've talked about them launching it as a surprise and all the advantages that came with that and risks. Firestorm was the big announcement months and months ago. Hey, Battlefield is going to have Battle Royale. This is going to be the big entry from EA. And then all of a sudden a sister developer under the EA publisher umbrella brings out a competitor earlier for free that is just so well received. What was the thinking there of them basically competing against each other? Because I'm thinking now, I like the concept of Battlefield, and we've talked about it, this game. It launched in a troubled state and all that, and it still has its problems. But I'm wondering now, what's the point? What does Firestorm need to do to be able to sort of get back some of that Battle Royale market share with a product that's only just come out, that still has all the hype, that is going into a new season, it's going to get a refreshed wave, it's free, it's got everyone talking, it's setting records for player numbers, all of this amazing stuff, and it's also an EA game competing with Battlefield and just sort of kicking it down into the swamp just a little bit further. Like Battlefield is sort of trying to claw its way out with its patches and new additions, and it's like, yeah, this big Battle Royale thing, nah, we've already got this covered.
And it's behind a paywall. I mean, that's the big thing right there. People are gonna if people don't own Battlefield, they will have to pay money in order to play Firestorm. Good luck.
I feel as though they did change. I feel as though when they announced it, they talked about it being squad-based, and now it is solos and duos confirmed. So they've changed tack on that, at least, which I think is a good thing, particularly if they want publicity from some of the big streamers who don't want to go in and play four-man squad Battle Royale all the time. But I agree that, like, the timing of this is really odd, and particularly we just had Anthem release, and everyone's playing Apex. Well, 50 million people at least are playing Apex, and they release Anthem. EA just kind of has a history of these really weird decisions. I don't know, although they're obviously they're the publisher, but I don't know how much real involvement they had with Apex Legends. But some of their decisions when it comes to timing, for example, the release of Titanfall 2, in between COD and Battlefield the other year, again, really off timing. Way to, like, you know, stitch up one of your dev teams. So yeah, I don't get it at all. And with regards to what Battlefield has to do, I think it's really going to struggle if it's well supported over the course of this live service, then it might pull some players in, particularly if they have some sales on for the game. You know, I mean, if the game is being sold, didn't you say there's some sales recently? But
it went on sale like 2 weeks after the official launch.
Yeah.
It went on a 50% sale for people who played Battlefield 1. So they're not worried about that.
Yeah, so they might perhaps do that, have like a 50% sale with the launch of it. But otherwise, I think it's probably in big trouble. Which, you know, it
can be virtually amazing. And I don't think it can compete with Free that came out just before, that just sort of got in there beforehand.
Can they make it free? Because it was declared
what a mess.
Is there a legal issue there?
I mean,
just a separate,
just to sort of stick the knife into the people, the loyal fans, the people who stuck with them. Just like, okay, you bought it for full price. 2 weeks later, we made it 50% off. Now here we go, free for everyone else. And screw you, true. Everyone who. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. To them, they need to do whatever this game now needs. And the feelings of the people who've already bought it are the least of their concerns, 100%. But yeah, I just feel too little too late with this. They're just, if it's absolutely mind-blowingly amazing, it will at least be well received by the people who already own Battlefield. I don't know even if it's awesome, if it can capture any share beyond that, because you think about how many battle royales can one player really play. Mostly one, really. And if people are now still actively enjoying Apex, they're going to have to sort of steal them away from that, which is a zero-sum game for EA as a publisher. And even that's going to be really tough no matter what they do. And just what an odd thing to have these two games developed in parallel to each other, with EA full well knowing we're going to be releasing two different competing products. I mean, even if Firestorm had been ready for the launch of Battlefield 5, then it would have been Battlefield 5 out with Firestorm, and then Apex coming in to try to sort of nibble away at that market share, at that player base, which it might have achieved by being free, but now the other way around? Yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
There you go, though. So let's bring it back to Rainbow Six Siege, and hot off the press, this just in, literally from about what are we saying? Not even 10 minutes ago, the Rainbow Six Siege Twitter account tweeted that they have restored the MMR impact for players who lost MMR. We've also reset the uncertainty value to what it was prior to the MMR losses, so impacted players will be able to move through the ranks as originally intended. Thank you for the patience over the weekend. And there's also an attached Reddit thread to that. Good news.
Yeah, there we are.
Great.
And I think important to note there, not only is it, okay, we're giving you back MMR, but there is also the confidence factor. So for those of you who are not quite as clear on how the ranking system works, you have this confidence value that the system has in your rank, and the more matches you play, the more confident the system becomes in what your actual rank should be. And that's what we as players experience that as a diminishing change in points that we gain or lose after every match. So at the beginning of a season, you're gaining sometimes 100 points or more, and then the more games you play, the further on you get. Towards the end of the season, you're gaining sometimes 10 or less points per win. That's the confidence value, because the game, or the ranking system within the game, already has a very good idea of where you belong, and so the change just becomes less and less. And that very validly would have been a problem here, because we've seen huge losses and then huge regains, and it's just all that. And so what they've done is they've just reset that to where it is at the beginning of a season and go on from there. So minimizing the impact as much as possible.
Good news.
Good stuff. With that, maybe let's get to some Pro League news. And I think what we can start out with is some of the changes we're going to be seeing, certainly the major changes in the various regions. So anyone in North America will notice this evening there are only 3 matches on instead of the normal 5, because we have lost one of the teams. So the team that was August in North America previously Noble Esports. They've disbanded and just completely left. So now there's one team less in North America, which means that basically every week the team that was supposed to face them gets a default 7-0 win. So tonight we won't be seeing EG playing. They're just going to go ahead with a 7-0 win.
Really unfortunate. And I don't think this was the case, but I think you have to mention, is this a product of auto relegation? What started this whole process off with Orgless disbanding was that the 7th place team took players from the 8th place team. Okay, so that 7th place team now has no worry of auto relegation because they were able to steal the teams and make that 8th place team disband. I'm not saying that's why that happened. The 7th place team is there for a reason. So clearly that would be the team that would be looking to make roster changes. That's going to be a natural thing. If you're in 7th place, you need to make some changes. But yeah, I mean, it's just really unfortunate. I'm looking at the schedule right now. EG doesn't play tonight. EG doesn't play this week. So I'm not going to get to see, EG play this week because Orgless disbanded. And that's unfortunate.
What's the policy on transferring in new players and changing the roster like that? Can it only be done during?
No, it's 3 of 5. You have to keep 3 of 5. That's really the only thing.
Maybe like a team shouldn't be changing players mid-season if it's going to impact the whole league and the integrity of the league in that way. Maybe not from other Pro League rosters after you can't bring. I can understand the need to have substitutes or reserve players because things can happen and you might have real life issues with a certain player. That's just by the by, that will happen. But I don't understand, pinching players off teams and all that back and forth. It just kind of doesn't seem right.
Well, I mean, there is a limited time frame, right, before the second half of the season starts. So it's like there's like this transfer window where everything suddenly happens, and we had that basically, was it last week, the week before? So over the last few weeks in between the two halves of the season. So they do limit it to a certain time. But yeah,
I like the suggestion there that, like Flank said there, Rogue, I like the suggestion that you can't take it from another team that's already in the league.
Yeah,
after the first half has concluded, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe the Challenger League would suffer and lose their best players mid-season, but
yeah, I think almost whichever way you slice it, there's going to be a few negative points. And I think one of the further parts of this report that is worth mentioning is that, basically in North America, this team, there is no 8th place, which means that we'll have the top Challenger League team at the end of the season automatically join Pro League as a replacement. But only the 7th place team will have to then have a playoff to give the 2nd place Challenger League team a chance. But there is no basically automatic relegation because we've already lost one team.
So if you think about it, the team the players that came from the 8th place team avoided auto relegation. So that's even if they don't want to change their roster, that's a big carrot hanging over their head saying, I should make this move. Even though I'm happy with my team, even though, this might not be the best move for me in a lot of ways, I'm going to avoid auto relegation if I do this. And that just kind of throws a different thing into the decision making. Again, not claiming that they did this, but it has brought up an issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It all depends on the sequence of events, right? Because as I haven't looked in detail at the exact story, but as far as I understood, there was a change of players first, and then eventually the decision was made, well, we can't really continue, and that's why Orgless disbanded. Am I getting that right?
They didn't have 3 of the 5 players.
Yeah.
They lost they didn't, so they couldn't.
But then, I mean, at the time that the roster changes were maybe decided on, that specifically that they wouldn't be able to fill their roster wasn't foreseen. It wasn't a purposeful consequence. So I don't know if there was a a meaningful decision made by the guys who are moving to say, oh, we need to get out of here because this is the way we stay in Pro League. It's hard to say, really, I think, if that makes sense.
Somebody's pointing out that Orgless, let me see here if they actually show it. Oh, they don't anymore. Somebody's saying in my chat that Orgless was actually above Rise and that Rise took their players. And that would make it even more shady because now the 8th place team is taking the 7th place team players to avoid auto relegation. And maybe Rise is paying their players a salary. I don't know. Let's just leave it at this. Auto relegation presents some issues when you approach situations like that.
Yeah,
I'm all for auto relegation. I can see the angle because we've had this discussion before. The problem isn't auto relegation. The problem is potentially some people not abusing, but getting around the system to ensure they get a free pass from it. I still like the idea of auto relegation. Because the thing is, it's not about the team getting relegated. It's about giving opportunities for the teams below to go up automatically.
Yeah, but does it have to be automatic? Shouldn't they then have a playoff and then the better team plays, whether that's the existing Pro League team or the up-and-coming Challenger League team? Shouldn't it be the better team rather than automatic? Because you could argue that even the 8th placed Pro League team is still better than the 1st place Challenger team. It could happen. So if they play against each other, there is at least a chance for the better team to remain or get in, rather than just you're out, whatever, even if the top Challenger team is not better than you in the long run, is not going to offer a more competitive environment in Pro League going forward, is not going to offer a better viewer experience going forward.
I mean, you could get the FA on the line and just change all of the Football League in Britain to that and across Europe. I mean, there's a reason they do it like that. The 2nd place team needs to win that playoff in esports for Rainbow Six Siege and prove that they're better than the 7th place team to move up. But the fact of the matter is the 1st place team in the Challenge League has already won that league and they deserve an opportunity to move up into the top league. And moreover, it keeps things fresh because let's say on the day the team already in the Pro League won, then you just have the status quo for another season. And what they want to do is promote the lower levels of play where people are pushing into the Challenger League and moving up through the leagues. And it keeps it a more fresh and sort of vibrant league to give them this guaranteed opportunity that one team from the Challenger League will go up. I'm broadly in favour.
I understand that perspective. I would still say that my opinion of the 1st place Challenger League team having earned an opportunity to play against the last placed Pro League team and earn their spot is also valid.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree because you're quite right in what you say. I do not disagree. There's every reason to believe that the bottom placed Pro League team is actually just fundamentally better, and in all likelihood they would be because they're a professional team with paid salaries, more than likely in their esports org. So actually in all likelihood the team is probably going to be better. They've been playing at a higher level against higher competition, with higher stakes for LAN finals. But this is a point about keeping the leagues dynamic and giving opportunities for teams to move up and down, and not just having, the teams that are in there earning all the money growing to a point where actually they couldn't be defeated by a team in the Challenger League that isn't paying salaries to the best players in Rainbow Six Siege. This just extends an opportunity. And it also makes it worth fighting for as well. It causes these sorts of talking points, the fact that you have auto relegation, because there is so much at stake that you cannot finish bottom because you're going down.
One thing to move this into a broader esports conversation here a little bit. One thing that this did with Orgless disbanding, a thought process that it started with me was, do we need to move to a franchising model in Rainbow Six Siege? For anybody who's not familiar, the franchising model is used in like League of Legends, for example, where instead of having qualifiers for Pro League spots, an organization would buy their spot in Pro League for a certain price, and that's theirs. So there is no relegation. There is none of that. My organization owns this spot in Pro League, and I outfit a team to play in that spot. Well, we saw a situation in Call of Duty, which doesn't have franchising, but it's close to franchising. Call of Duty, their league, Accelerate, which is an org that's involved with Rainbow Pro League as well, qualified for the Call of Duty World League. And the 5 players that qualified, apparently the rumor is that Accelerate was looking to sell that Pro League spot as soon as they qualified for like 150 or 200,000. Now, again, I'm basing that on rumors, so take that with a grain of salt. But what isn't a rumor, what is a fact, is that Accelerate just dropped all 5 of those players. Dropped them all. So those 5 players earned their way into Pro League, which is probably a lifetime dream of theirs. And the org like that just dropped them. The org keeps their Pro League spot and can now go outfit that team with 5 different complete players. So, you know,
for them.
Yeah, there's evils on both sides, you know, but it just kind of depends.
Yeah. You look at Major League Soccer in America, that's a franchise model. And there's a lot of talk about how that's not actually good for the league and for the competition within US soccer. That you have these teams that literally cannot lose their place, and it does not give opportunity for grassroots and other soccer teams to develop and move up through leagues and win a place in that top echelon of Major League Soccer. And in fact, there is actually all sorts of legal things going on at the moment where there are certain teams saying, actually, you know, under FIFA guidance, there should be some opportunity for a team to be promoted into whatever the top tier of football is, or soccer is, as you would say in the States.
But then doesn't it just sort of change the model, just become different, or the same thing from a different perspective, as in you don't have teams or clubs moving up and down, but you just have then the clubs, whenever the transfer window opens, bringing up the best new talent and replacing individual players that aren't performing as well. So you still have this movement up and down. It's just the organizations stay where the players move, or you have where entire teams move, and you still have the players changing up and down, but it's just also different organizations. I mean, at the end of the day, is it that huge of a difference?
Yeah, I mean, there are other teams that exist outside of the MLS in the States. Now, I don't know a great deal about it because I don't actually follow the MLS. I do follow European football. And basically, the problem is those other teams do not have an opportunity to go into the MLS that has the TV, and it's the highest tier of soccer or football in the United States. And so obviously that opportunity is not afforded to them. There is no competitive way in football terms to get into the MLS. The model is such that I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you kind of have to buy in to it.
Yeah, it's a franchise model.
Yeah,
I mean that's all it is, and that's the way all sports really are. Professional sports are in the States. It's you buy a franchise, like the Pittsburgh Pirates are a Major League Baseball team. They, their owners treated that team like a cash cow. They would trade off their best players every single year. They didn't make the playoffs for I forget how many years in a row. It was an abysmal franchise, but that was theirs, and they were going to keep that as long as they wanted it. It's
kind of a foreign concept in European sports.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah, it kind of is. I don't mean that in a rude way. It just kind of is. Like we've had teams get promoted into our top tier of football here, the Premier League, and we've got a couple of teams this year that are doing really well that quite recently were in the lower division, and they're actually competing. You got Wolves up there. I think they're like 7th. Wolverhampton Wanderers, they're like 7th in the Premier League, I think. Watford are up there. And it weren't so long ago, they were in the Championship, the division below.
That's good.
Anyway.
That's good to know. I'm going to move us on at this point. Because I think we're getting into the weeds a little bit here.
Before you move us on, can I say, can we allow a good period of time to do Q&A this week?
Okay.
Because I'm getting loads of
Oh,
questions.
good Lord. All right, let's go through this then relatively quickly if you want Q&A as well. So, next little bit of news for the EU Pro League. We're going to see Mocket disappear, basically, and replaced with a team called Natus Vincere, Born to Win. And basically, it's just a sale of the team. So KS, Rips, Corey, Kryne, and Lazzo, who used to be sort of in one of the sort of management coaching roles, those will now be the players, and they're basically going from Mockit to Navi. Just in case you're watching EU Pro League and suddenly there's different teams there. So
that's good news. It's good news.
Let's have a look at that. We're also going to see another EU Pro League change. ENCE is out basically as an organization, and the roster has been picked up by Mouse Sports. So there we go. The team basically stays pretty much as it is. We've got Wilkie, Gomfi, Chate, Boonsey, and Sleben, and they're now playing under Mouse rather than ENCE. In terms of Space Station, we're back to North America. We have Brian in as a player, and Redeemer, he's still with them, but he's now basically benched. He's a backup, he's a reserve player, and also focusing on content, as they put it in their tweet.
I know we're going through this quick. I won't be long, but what are they thinking? I'm dying to know what's actually going on there. All respect in the world to Brian. He's been grinding Pro League for a very long time. This is zero disrespect to him, but Space Station just had a great showing at the Invitational. You could argue that they were the second best team there. They took G2 to 3 maps, and they make a roster change. What are they thinking? That's all I'll say.
We'll see how it plays out, eh?
Wasn't he? He was IGL of SSG as well, no?
I'm not sure exactly how all the responsibilities broke down on that team.
I wasn't sure either how the responsibilities were, but I'm sure he was either IGL or shot caller. But yeah, I was blown away to hear that, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Yeah, and final announcement. Now, I've got this tweet here. It's from Nora Rengu, which is, of course, a Japanese team. So that's in the original Japanese. Let me read out to you the Microsoft Twitter translation because it's quite entertaining. So we have at Walker NR announcement of the player retirement. The Walker NR athlete retired from the competition scene and moved to the streamer division and will continue to act as a talent of the Strayream from now on. I will live as one man rather than a professional gamer, as the intention of the person, she envy in brackets. Geno, so please support me to return.
Oh.
There you go. There's the news. So basically, when we translate that into proper English, Walker is retiring. He's no longer going to be competing as a pro player. He will stay with Nora Rengu as part of their sort of stream team, but he will no longer be part of their competitive team, and he's basically being replaced by JJ.
Shocking.
It is actually, because he was a very skilled player.
Yeah,
a very
absolutely.
skilled player. So he's... That's obviously a personal choice. There's no way he's been forced out of that. He just wants to concentrate on content creation and streaming.
Yeah, exactly. That is, as I understand it as well, his choice. And best of luck to him. I mean, it's a valid choice. You think about sort of the hardships and the dedication that is required to stay in one of the top pro leagues in sort of their country, their region, and even globally nowadays, the APAC team's doing just better and better. And there's a lot of sort of sacrifices and strains that come with that. And yeah, he's obviously taking the step back and just going to be focusing on streaming and getting along with that. And best of luck to him.
Yeah,
I think.
Good luck to him.
I mean, we said it in our streams and podcasts before. Nora Rengu really did an amazing job at the Invitational, and even sort of over the last few LAN events at sort of capturing the hearts of the fans. They're great fun to watch, and Walker certainly right at the spear tip for the entire team. Great player, great to watch. And yeah, a bit of a shame to sort of not see him in Pro League anymore. And there we go. So that, I think we can wrap up basically Pro League as well. We've got obviously matches starting this week again, if everything goes well, if there's not any sound bugs that torpedo the entire endeavor. So we can maybe talk about the sort of results of those games next week. But yeah, that's the news for now. Then why don't you start us off with some of these questions, Pete?
All right. Russell Banter, if you're still in chat, this is your question from earlier. Hey, Pete, Rogue and Flanked, do you think the devs should address MNK, mouse and keyboard, much more aggressively on console. I think they've forgotten about us plebs. Much love from Ireland. What I would say to you, Russell, for an insight into what they're doing to tackle mouse and keyboard on console, do check out last week's podcast, which is on my channel. You don't need to watch it all. Go to the pinned comment, and there's a specific part of that podcast where we're talking to Craig Robinson, who's the community developer for Rainbow Six Siege, and we asked him that very question. What are they doing with regards to mouse and keyboard on console, and what's their policy? And basically, you'll probably be surprised. I mean, they're doing a lot. You would be surprised. I was surprised anyway to hear what they have to deal with to get to the bottom of it, because basically the hardware that's being used to allow people to use mouse and keyboard, and I forgot what it's called, like a Zim or something, they'll do like a firmware update. So Ubisoft will instigate an update that will stop people using mouse and keyboard, but then those people or the community of Zim will put a firmware update out that then bypasses it. So I think,
I think sort of let's not got into too much detail there.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's in last week's podcast, and there is the pinned comment if you want to go and check that. And it's not us sort of speaking on behalf of the developers. It's Craig actually giving us their perspective and explaining it in quite a lot of detail. So yeah, I would say go back to that as well. And yeah, if anyone else, I've seen questions come up throughout sort of the broadcast. Do feel free to post those again so that I can get to those as well.
I've got one.
But to my chat, bring some questions up.
Go on then, Pete.
James Thomas, could Ubisoft offer some rewards to the pro players to help replicate R6 fix problems? James asked me that earlier. I think pro players do. I think behind the scenes, they communicate a lot of these issues, and they will send videos and issues direct to Ubisoft with regards to these problems. Whether or not they would need to pay a pro player to replicate it, I think they could probably find willing members of the community.
And in fact, I would refer to last week's podcast again, because again, Craig gave us an insight there on how it works and how they have actually dedicated teams that first replicate it and then send it on to the fixed team. They replicate it and then it goes on from there. He went into quite a bit of detail. I would again recommend go back and hear that process from there. Cat5 Live. Sorry, okay, go ahead. You go.
412 Ray Ray says, I've stopped playing due to how not fun solo queue is. What can Ubi do to address that? Okay. A couple of things. I think that the first step would be for you to address why you don't have anybody to play with. There's lots of different ways you could go about that, from just, talking in game and, whenever you run across a cool person, ask if you can add them to, I have a Discord where a lot of people meet up. There's other apps as well where you can meet up with people to play with. From a developer standpoint, they are making the game more player friendly, and I think that down the line, obviously we haven't heard anything. I wouldn't be surprised me if down the line we did see something come along the lines to make solo queuing a little bit more bearable. But I'll tell you what's not bearable to solo queue right now is Apex Legends. I know we talked about Apex Legends a good bit. I've tried solo queuing that game. You want to talk about something that's frustrating? Holy cow! But I get your frustration, man, and I would say just find a squad.
Yeah, I think part of it is it's just on us. There's a Discord for Rainbow Six. There's an official Discord, and it's basically just full of voice channels for the different regions. Obviously, it's most fun to play any multiplayer game with real-life friends. Full stop. That's always the best experience you can have. If you're at a stage currently where you don't have actual friends that are playing it as well, you need to take that step. And if you really want to enjoy the game, you really need to make the effort to take that step to go and find some players. And it is possible. And then once you get to know those, then you go with them and you have your regular team to play with. It's possible. What can they do to make it a better experience? It's challenging.
Yeah.
And we'd just be theorizing right now. So there's a lot
of stuff we've talked about before could help as far as changes to ranked, but again, we've beat that dead horse, and it's not coming anytime soon.
Yeah, I had a question from Cat5 Live. That's a bit of a discussion topic question. If you could add any new mechanic to the game, what would they be? So, for instance, jumping, opening doors, building destruction, etc. And if we could remove anything, what would we choose?
One thing I would like, and I don't know if it's feasible for Rainbow Six, and I've spoken about this in the past, but for perhaps if there was a sequel, would be to have another tier of destruction or more tiers of destruction. So instead of soft and hard, you would have one unique gadget that could open a concrete wall. And it wouldn't be common at all. Like, it would require a whole redesign of the maps and how the game's played. But going forward, if there was ever a sequel to Rainbow Six, that's something I'd love to see.
Yeah, I think we have the 3 tiers, right? We have completely reinforced, we have completely solid, we have unreinforced, and then actually there's a 4th tier that is like floors, or some of the walls, in fact, as well, which are actually soft, but then have metal bars in between.
Yeah. Yeah, like on the stairs on Border, there's that wall that you can put, and it has the metal. Yeah, so, okay. But typically you talk of 2.
Yeah, maybe some areas, like we have a lot of sort of military-style buildings with checkpoints and stuff. What if there was like bulletproof glass, stuff that you could see, both could see through, both could not shoot through? There's interesting things, definitely. As for doors, as a suggestion, there was one of the things I remember from the Six Invitational, that little display they had around the whole area. Really early on, there was supposed to be a mechanic in the game of actually reinforcing doors, so that in doors, instead of having just wood that you would nail over it, there were actual doors there, and you could sort of grab a chair and you'd sprint up to this door and jam the chair under the doorknob, and it would stop people coming in, and funky stuff like that. So there was definitely originally an idea of having proper doors on hinges. Do we need it? Do we want it? Hard to say at this point. Like, it's almost hard to judge how much it would affect the game. But yeah, I don't want jumping. We see already enough glitchy spots that if we add jumping, then all kinds of weird and bizarre things are going to happen. So in terms of that, I think it's absolutely fine. Anything to remove? Window cell debris. You shoot a window, you punch a window, and you just have this random nonsense that just unrealistically piles up at the bottom of a windowsill. I know we've spoken about this before, how that also kind of stops spawn peeking and it makes it less overpowered, but I mean, its client side is really annoying. I would rather it just sort of, as Epi mentioned last week, sort of just glide away and be gone. And then every time, it just becomes consistent. Every time you go to a window, every time you smack a barricade, it's just consistent what happens with the debris. It just falls away and it's done, and you don't have this random stuff that lies there or just sometimes even sticks in the middle of the barricade.
A mechanic that I would like to see added, and I don't know if this is a mechanic, but along these lines, is I would like to see a completely outside map one of these days. And I don't know how exactly they could pull it off to where it could work. If you would just have like some type of perimeter wall that everybody starts inside of, and it's impossible to exit that wall. But I think that could be a really cool aspect. Is in a completely outside map, you could use rocks and you could use maybe some type of walls. Like you could call it like a training element, where because we had stuff like that in the Army where we were training buildings that didn't have roofs. They would just be walls and stuff to practice breaching and stuff like that. So that could be an element that I think could be really cool. Something that I'd like to see, because you could throw a lot of different stuff in there. And then a mechanic that I would like disappear would be probably shields.
All of them.
Yes, all of them.
That was my question, so I'll hand it over back to one of you guys.
Okay. What do you think of DDoSing on console? Is that a problem? That's from Steve Archer. He says it's really bad on console. Is DDoSing really bad?
I think it might have been actually tweeted at me the other day as well. Obviously, I don't play it on console at all, so I don't experience it. But the word on the street is that you go into a ranked, you're just about to win, and then the server will just crash.
So, they're DDoSing the server or the individuals?
Yeah, they're DDoSing the server, and I think everybody walks away like it never happened.
Yeah.
Basically.
How do they get the IP address of the server?
Well, different routers will allow you to see, like, if you have a NetDoomer router, it'll show you the IP address of whatever you're connecting to.
What a scumbag thing to do.
Yeah.
And is that definitely what's happening? They're not just somehow crashing the server from within the game, or do we even know what it is?
Well, yeah, I should probably. I don't.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, from what I'm hearing, it is actually a problem. I do play on console. I've never had it happen aware of. I haven't had a real heavy rank session.
Yeah, but I think
recently,
that's
so.
it. Obviously, people only do it to you when you're winning, so that's why you don't.
Which I don't have to worry about on console very often. So.
Well, I suppose the only way to stop that would be to hide the IP address of the server.
There's DDoS protection now.
Is there?
Like there is. Yeah, I'm not sure how feasible it is to have on all of your game servers, but there are. I know that there are servers that have DDoS protection, and it could be again a cat and mouse game where you get the protection, but yeah, that's a problem.
All right, maybe one last question here I have from Tiger Killer. Should attackers get a second drone-based operator? Basically, since the beginning of the game, we've only had Twitch, and she used to be overpowered. Now she's gone through a set of different nerfs. So in theory, having a second drone-based operator that is able to do something could be balanced. Maybe especially now that we already have Mozzie in the game as a counter anyway, that would sort of allow you to add more in terms of special drone operators without the risk of really going overboard?
I don't see any reason why not. If you're going to have so many operators in the game, I think you calculated yourself that we've got another 7 years of operators at the current rate of expansion and the rate at which they're adding the operators to the game. So to have a new drone operator seems to me like it's something that will happen for sure. There's a lot you could do with a drone. I mean, you could. It doesn't have to be something like Twitch's drone that goes around tasing people. You could have some kind of area of effect gadget ability that works electronically, or that bores through a hole in a wall. Or there's so many things it could do that isn't just related to intel or just tasing people. So for sure, I think we'll get another drone operator on attack at some stage.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's something that we'll definitely see at some point. And again, the possibilities are pretty endless as far as what all they could do. And I guess to answer the question, I would like to see something like this implemented. Stay away from things that do damage. You know what I mean? Like I'm fine with like a healing drone, but I don't. I had a question earlier about a drone that could deploy gas. No, like. Well, that's not cool. But
what if it had like a tactical nuclear warhead on it?
I like it. It's perfect. Let's do it.
Everyone dies. Yeah, that's the way to end the match as well.
That's a draw. Servers are down.
You don't need a DDoS. You just pull out that drone. They'll just call that operator the DDoS.
Right. Before we wrap up, I've had just one great question come in as well from Han Solo. Thoughts on ranked having only ESL maps starting season 2 with the pick and ban?
Yeah, please.
I'd kind of like it because it gives you less to master, and you could say, right, well, I just have to focus on learning XYZ maps. But I think that you will always need to. Well, you don't always have to. That's bollocks. But I think it would be nice if the new map did go into ranked. And then have the ESL map pool on top of that. One thing that I think would be kind of cool is if you could veto maps when they pop up. So, like, some people say, crikey, I just played 5 maps and 3 of them were consular or something. So if you could just veto one map, that would kind of get rid of that issue. That would be kind of cool. So not necessarily a vote for a map, just say, hey, I don't want to play X.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely options that could be done there, or just maybe a system that makes sure that that you rotate through the maps more evenly. All kinds of things that could be done there. I mean, at least there's still casual, I think, because it is kind of a shame to have all of these maps that have taken so much effort to make and that are in there, all this content in the game that basically could fall by the wayside for a lot of players that focus on ranked only. That's personally what I see as the downside, but then I say that as someone who doesn't play all that much ranked, or when I do, it's only in like very occasionally in a group of friends. So yeah, for me, I don't experience the frustration of going up in unbalanced maps as much. And that's where that could come from, just as a sort of side note. But yeah, I think overall the one downside would be the shame of missing out on maps that have been put in there and just becoming a little bit stale and monotonous, being focused down to a small group of maps.
Yeah, certainly that's a concern. But again, I think that's why we need 3 game modes: casual, ranked, and ranked. In my opinion, that would solve that issue. Unranked would feature more maps, but if you can wish all you want, but it doesn't appear like that's going to happen this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, exactly that suggestion coming up in my stream as well. Casual, ranked, and ESL, or something like that. Excellent. Well, I think that's about the time we have today and pretty much all the topics we were hoping to cover as well. Thank you everyone for joining in. Thank you Ridge Wallet for sponsoring this episode once again. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us today. Have a good evening and goodbye for now.
Thanks everyone. See ya.
Bye.